Hello, my name is Sam Robinson, and I am the Gnostic Syncretist. Tonight, I would like to talk about a subject that has been greatly misrepresented through Hollywood and throughout the world for pretty much as long as the Catholic Church has been in the business of sending out misinformation, which, as we know, has been probably since the very beginning of its inception in 325 AD and the Council of Nicaea under Constantine. But going back to a more current time period, let's just say that the ideas that they have pushed everywhere about what people know to be the occult and magic is not what they believe is not actually what is the case. Even I fall into this category. I was not a very typical Christian, was never very dogmatic. But even when I started breaking out of that paradigm and began to do my research, I eventually stumbled onto the occult, became friends with someone who was associated with Masonry, never joined, but even I still have reluctance to even look into this topic, thinking somehow I'd be tainted based on all the programming and indoctrination I'd received in various venues that they have access to us in. What I discovered was a subject that is so much more complex and difficult to perceive than the surface layers that they present to us. As everything has its polarities to it, as in the seventh principle, or one of the seven principles of Hermeticism, principle of polarity. It's the third principle. And what I found was that the occult is not what people think it is, but some of it is what people think it is. There's two sides to every coin. And I discovered that there was white occultism and black or dark occultism, and the two work in rather different ways. The formulas are different, the intentions are different, and the results are different. The methodologies they use, though in a sense they are still drawing from certain energies, but there is a very fine distinction between these energy types. So let me begin with a quote by a very famous occultist, who I've actually not read very much about, but his quote will serve my purpose. And he states that essentially magic is the alteration of manifestations of consciousness through the use of the will. Now, that's white occultism. Black occultism is stated almost exactly the same way. It is the use of energies of manifestation, magic, if you will, to alter consciousness and its manifesting properties in accordance to the will. Now you'll stop and say, wait, you just said the exact same thing. Well, the big difference is the capitalization of the letter W in the will. In white occultism, you capitalize it, meaning white magic in white occultism is the use of consciousness altering energies that you draw down yourself in accordance with the will, the ultimate will, the will of the divine creator, in accordance with his laws, his natural laws, in accordance with karmic harmony, and essentially means you draw into manifestation energies through the pathways that the divine creator has already set up as almost like circuit boards throughout the universe. Meaning you're basically using the channels that would have been naturally used for these energies to come down, except you are consciously drawing them down through your will. But they're still following the energetic channels that the divine creator would have essentially utilized for manifestation. So you're in accordance with natural law, you're in accordance with harmony, and you're simply taking nature and pushing it further down the plan that would have occurred naturally at some point anyway. The difference between white occultism and dark is quite profound. That, in that phrase, when you're talking about the will, it's a lowercase will. W. It's lowercase w in will, meaning your own personal will, your own personal desires, your own selfish reasons for anything whatsoever. Drawing down energies into manifestation in any way that is used for personal gain and not used to push the universe's evolutionary processes as further down desired paths or natural channels is the exact definition of dark magic. Dark magic is doing any of those things for a selfish or personal reason. It's not, these energies are not for experimentation in that way. I mean, you have to experiment, but not for your own gain. You are only supposed to do this in accordance with the master will of the universe, and never for selfish reasons. So intentions matter quite a lot, as well as why you do them, why you do this at all. There are several other major differences. Black magic typically involves sex magic, as well as blood rituals. White occultism magic typically involves meditative practices, yoga, yogi exercises, breathing exercises, concentration exercises, exercises of the will, creating mental images and pictures and holding them in your mind, especially in Kabbalistic images. And all this is done to engage the layers of consciousness in your psyche that are basically untapped and reside deep in the mind. And from the majority of us are untapped. I mean, it's untapped for me. It takes years and years of training to gain access to these higher centers of consciousness, and dedication, practice, and perseverance. Most dark occultists aren't going for a self-transformation. They are going for world transformation, and thus they only need to stay at their lower levels of psychic development to employ those methodologies. They're not trying to work with the Creator. They don't want their higher consciousness. They know about it. But if you want to look at the Kabbalistic tree in light of this information, I would say they pretty much stay stuck between the level of Tifereth, which is higher consciousness, and Yesod, which is psychic consciousness, the astral plane. So, what you have here in the world, in the general public mind, is the idea that anything involving the occult is evil and is inherently Satanism and dark occultism. Well, that's just one of the many lies that they've perpetrated upon the human race to keep you from uncovering the other side of the coin. Everything always has an inverse and an opposite, and the inverse of dark occultism is obviously white occultism. There's a yin and there's a yang. And the Gnostics knew about divine magic. I'm pretty sure they practiced it. Definitely engaged in altered states of consciousness. That's how they uncovered the archons Yaldabaoth and the origin story of our species. So, I want to talk more about this, but I wanted to give a brief overview and the differences between white and black occultism. Now, another specific point that might need to be made, though some people might not know exactly what I'm referring to. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, you have the 10 Sephiroth. Well, you also have 10 negative Sephiroth at the bottom, another tree, like a dark tree at the bottom, that most people don't study. It's called the Clifothic tree. And these are the energies that were used in manifestation of the universe that are the leftovers, the chaotic energies, the unbalanced energies that were set aside and basically disposed of in a way because they are no longer in equilibrium and they no longer serve their purpose, because every Sephiroth needs to remain in equilibrium. Well, at certain points they perceive an infusion of energy and become overbalanced. These overbalanced forces, if not re-equilibrated, end up in the Clifothic area of existence. These are the energies that these dark magicians use. They use Clifothic energies. It's like taking an agent, like a chemical compound that has been undergone equilibrium, and then breaking it apart again into its chaotic counterparts and using it back in manifestation, as opposed to leaving it in equilibrium. White occultism has nothing to do with this type of chaotic breaking up of energies. The entire point of white occultism is to, and what the Gnostics did, equalize and harmonize everything in energy and in the universe as they could. I don't know the extent of what they could do, but that is what their intentions were to do. Create harmony and create equilibrium. Dark magic is the exact opposite. And people need to take a step back and try to look at these subjects with a different mindset, try to take a bird's eye view, and not just believe the superstitious nonsense that has been peddled to us most of our lives through Hollywood, through the church, through various venues, like I said, of ways to get to our minds, and there's tons of them. So I wanted to cover this topic because I find too often when you bring up this topic of occultism, which etymologically literally only means hidden or veiled. All it means is hidden knowledge. It doesn't mean evil knowledge. It doesn't mean good knowledge. It means hidden knowledge. And hidden knowledge can be used in different ways, good or bad ways. And I know that there's a lot of people that do not know that there are mystics who use the occult to do good, because that's what their intention is when they're doing it. And that's the type of energies they bring into manifestation, ones that are harmonizing. There was a renaissance in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where white occultism tried to kind of have a resurrection. And it worked for a little while, but then it eventually failed. And here we are today with the world run by hypnotists and dark occultists, and very few white mages to be seen as far as I can tell. So anyway, this is Sam Robinson, the Gnostic Syncretist. I wanted to cover this. I will cover it more in depth at a later date, but I wanted to give a brief synopsis of the differences in magic, and the two types of magic, and that there are actually two types of magic. And people need to get over some of their superstitions about the occult, just like I did. Sam Robinson, signing out.